For today's DC Multiverse review, we are looking at the Mcfarlane Toys Deluxe Theatrical Edition Supergirl. Before I talk about the accessories and the figure, let's take a quick look at the data profile card. That's usually what I would say, but for today's review, we're going to skip that because we already know Supergirl's origin story, so there's really no point of reading the card information. So let's just jump straight into the accessories that are included with this figure. And let's start with the interchangeable hands. So on the figure, by default, she does have a single fist hand and she has a single item holding hand. It would have been great if they'd given her another fist hand and another item holding hand so you can have a pair, but they did not do that. And for the swappable hands, she does come with the flight hands, which look like this. So if you do get her into flight poses, these are the hands that you're going to swap to. So there are the interchangeable hands that comes in this box. And for the next accessory, she comes with the sword, which belongs to one other character in this story. Now, the sword here is sculpted nicely. I like the way that the colors look on the sword too, because it's not just like a flat gray everywhere. And even these tiny sculpted details are just painted in this nice gold color, which is a surprise because it just shows that they put budget into the paint here for this accessory. Now, unfortunately, the sword hilt itself and the sword blade are like this soft plastic, so it is prone to warping during the summer weather, so do be careful with that. And for the hilt design here, I like the way that looks. And then for the handle of the sword, it is painted in this red color. And down here with these sculpt details, you can see that it's painted in the gold as well. So overall, very nice sculpt with the sword. And here's a comparison with the sword that was included with the comic version. And as you can see, the sword is completely different, even the sculpting of it. But when it comes to the paint details, the comic version of the sword is just flat gray. There is no colors like this one, which is very unfortunate. So you can see it's just all gray color. So I'm glad that for the movie version, they actually made the sword look better. And another thing you can do with the sword accessory is that if you don't want Supergirl to hold this, you can actually give this to another figure to hold it. So it just depends if they have the right sort of hand to hold this sword. But yeah, it's a custom option right there. So that is the sword accessory. Now let's move on to the alternate head sculpt. So as you can see, there is no hair sculpt with this alternate head sculpt because there is this fun function here where with this figure in particular, the hair sculpt is actually removable. So you can swap it onto the head sculpt here, which I think is cool, but at the same time, it is kind of scary to look at without the hair sculpt because that's not normal. But when it comes to the sculpting of the face here, I can see a little bit of a likeness with this head sculpt in particular. It does look like the actress from some angles, but there is still this problem where you can see the cartoony vibes of the face sculpt. And this has been a problem with most live action figures for Mcfarlane Toys. They just don't really do a good job with their live action figures. They always make the faces look so cartoony, which is really strange. But that's just something I've noticed over the years because if you look back to even the Henry Cavill Superman figure, yeah, that face sculpt is not even close. So for this one, likeness is somewhat there, but it's not perfect either. But for the other head sculpt, the likeness is just not even there at all. I just don't see it. So this one looks okay, but the other one, not so great. So I will show how to swap the head sculpts later in the review. So yeah. All right, let's move on to the last accessory. So for this set, they're treating it as a 2-pack, even though it's just technically one figure. But on the box, it says Supergirl and Puppy Crypto. So you do have Puppy Crypto as a little figurine here that is also an accessory. And yeah, the sculpt of it is great, right? I think they did a good job here, but there is no articulation on this little figurine. I'm not asking for much articulation, but imagine if you can actually swivel the head to look a different direction, right? So yeah, it's unfortunate that it's just a pre-posed figurine, but it will go nicely with this Supergirl or you can have it with the Superman figure from last year or other Supergirl figures that they have made in the past. It just works for, display. So there is the puppy crypto figurine dash accessory that is included in this box. And that is all the contents that you get with this figure. Well, of course, the last thing that she comes with is the figure stand. But in this case, of course, with a figure based on a character that can fly, they should have given her a flight stand. So there it is. That is everything for the accessories. Let's move on to the aesthetics of this figure. Taking a closer look at Supergirl here, let's start with the head sculpt that is on the figure by default. As you can see with the expression of this face sculpt, she has the calm, neutral expression, which overall, I think the face sculpt came out fine here. It looks good, but when it comes to the likeness, that is where it has this issue. Moving on to the hair sculpt, this version of Supergirl has the windswept hair sculpt, which is different from the regular version with the plastic cape, where she has the neutral hair sculpt. And one thing that you can actually do with both versions of the figure is that you can actually swap the hair sculpts, which is an interesting functionality that this figure has, which is a rare thing to see because they don't usually give you the option to swap the hair sculpts at all. And this is one of those times where you actually see that they can do that. So it is interesting. Now, I am curious if the gold label one has the same functionality. But if it doesn't, then it makes sense because there has to be at least one outlier where one of the versions of these figures, the hair sculpt is just permanent. And I think the gold label one might be permanent. But if you have all three, let me know if there is some sort of swappability that is possible. But yeah, that is basically the little cool function with the hair sculpts. And now let's take a closer look at the hair sculpt. I think the overall sculpt here looks great. There is a wash to it with the paint colors, as you can see, but it's like really faint. And on the top part right here, you can see the black outline with this part of the hair color, which is accurate to what she looks like in the movie. So at least they did the hair colors pretty close to what she looks like. But for the face sculpt, as I said, it's a good face sculpt by itself, but when it comes to the likeness, it's not there. So that is everything I'm going to say about the head sculpts. Let's move on to the costume. So for the costume, she does have some similarities to Superman. As you can see, the blue areas are heavily texturized, which is great to see that come back. And the S emblem is the same S emblem we saw with Superman. And for the belt, there is sculpted details on there, but it looks really plain from a distance. So if you want those sculpted details to stand out, I'm pretty sure you know what to do. And then for this part, it is a skirt that she's wearing, which is kind of in this sort of windswept motion of some kind. So that's pretty cool that they sculpted the dress nicely. And for the bottom of her legs, she is wearing these sort of, I don't know what to call these, but it's like really high boots or something. Do correct me in the comments below, but she's wearing a similar design to what we see with the comic version of this costume. And for the bottom of the shoes, these are not high heels. These are like the flat heels that are just like, lowered. And then for the bottom of it, it's just all gold color, right? So there is the legs. And then something I do want to point out with this figure, I have noticed looks really off. You notice how long her arms look? I don't know what happened here, but the proportions with her arms are just way too long. Not only are they long, but they're slender, so it just makes the proportions look weird, and I just have to point this out. So, yeah, this is something that, is pretty nitpicky, but it makes sense because usually the arms are never this long, so I don't know what happened here with the sculpt, but yeah, I have to call this out. Now, for the other part of the figure, she does have a cloth-art cape. And on the back side of it, you do have the S emblem up there, which is covered by her hair sculpt. It is way up there, which I think is not great. I feel like they could have lowered the S emblem a little bit, but it's pretty hidden by the hair sculpt. And for the wire cape itself, it is not the best wiring. It is really cheap wiring, as you can see. It barely wants to pose at all. Like, it just feels like there's not even a wire in there, but there is a wire. It's just, it's just really, this, right? You see how it barely wants to, like, pose at all because of just the way that the wiring is made. Yeah, that's unfortunate. But that is pretty much most of the aesthetics with Supergirl here. There is really nothing else I can talk about, but I think overall the look of the figure is fine. But I do have my problems, as I mentioned. So there it is. There is the aesthetics for Supergirl. And let's move on to the articulation now. For the articulation, let's start with the head sculpt. So because she has the windswept hair sculpt, you're not going to be able to look up all the way with this head sculpt, unfortunately. So when it comes to flight poses, that is going to be a problem right there. Looking down, she can look down not too bad. Turning her head left and right, there is going to be a little bit of hindrance with the hair sculpt, but she can still do that. Tilting her head side to side, no problems. So overall, the head sculpt articulation is decent, but there will be some hindrance. For the arms, she can lift out her arm this much. She can swing them back and forth, no problems. She does have a bicep swivel up here. She does have double jointed in the arms. She also has swivel in the hands as well as wrist articulation, which works, right? And for the torso, she does have a upper cut here, as you can see, but it's like really freaking tight. It just doesn't really want to move at all. It feels really restricted. And then leaning forward, it doesn't even do. Leaning back, it barely even wants to lean back. And then for the waist, it barely even wants to move. I think it's because my copy is new, but it's just really restricted with the movements. So, for that flight pose, you really need the torso, the upper part, and the lower waist region to actually move, but she's not able to do that. For the legs, she can split out this much. Oh, actually, that's a pretty good split. Okay, so she can split out that much. That's not bad. Kicking outward, you are going to run into some problems there, right? Does she have like upward thigh swivels? Nope, they do not work. Does she have double jointed? Yes, she does. Articulation in the feet and swivel and no toe articulation. That is surprising. But that has been happening recently with some of these figures where we're not seeing toe articulation. It's decent, but overall, when you want to get her into action poses and flight poses, it is going to be a difficult task because of some restrictions with the articulation. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's move on to showing the accessory on her hand here, how to put the sword on, as well as swapping the head sculpt. All right, so let's start with the head sculpt. So what you want to do is you just want to pull the hair off, which, interestingly enough, I can show how it looks like on the inside. So you can see how that's supposed to just match with the top part of her head sculpt. You just basically align it. And once you put it in, it actually stays in pretty nicely. And what you want to do now is you just want to pull the head sculpt off, which surprisingly, it actually comes off pretty easily, which is great. And then what you're going to do now is you're going to take this head sculpt and you're just going to put it in, and then you're just going to slide this hair sculpt into that area, and then there you go. It is in. Let me just try to match everything because it does look kind of off. Give me a second here. All right, there we go. So there is the other head sculpt on the figure, and that's basically what you do. It's a simple process. Now, of course, if your head sculpt is stuck, use a hair dryer to loosen the stiffness, and then you'll be able to pull the head off, and then you can swap everything. So very simple task. Now for the sword, let's put the sword on her hand, which is easy to do. What you want to do is you just basically kind of move the fingers out of the way, and there you go. Now you have Supergirl with the sword, which I don't know why Supergirl would ever need a sword, but she has it in the story, so there has to be a reason. So there it is, the accessories equipped to her. And now it is time for one comparison for just today's review, just to keep things simple. And here is the live action Supergirl next to her comic book counterparts. Unfortunately, I don't remember which bin I stored her hand accessories in for the comic version, so I can't have her holding the sword, which is quite unfortunate. But there is the Supergirl live action version holding the sword, doing the pose. I probably did the pose wrong, but in the comic cover, she's basically holding the sword upward. So that's what I'm trying to recreate here. And as you can see, the costume designs are very similar, right? They took a lot of inspiration from the source material here. She has a skirt, she has the same sort of leggings that she wears. And for this one, she doesn't have like the lower heels with the, the shoes down here, but this one does. And then for the cloth-wired cape, both of them do have a cloth-wired cape, which is great. And I believe this one also has yes, it does. It has the S emblem on the back as well. And both of them have this sort of windswept hair sculpt, which is interesting. Now, in terms of scaling, though, this live-action movie one is taller than the comic one, which is something that I've noticed, having them stand next to each other. But yeah, there are the differences between them, and that is going to be the comparison for today's review. And if you found today's review informative, do give this video a like. If you want to subscribe to the channel for more action figure content and whatever else I do on here, it would be much appreciated. With that said, take care, and I will see you in the next video.